over the decades, I've had many days about like Monday, some even worse, some slightly less, in terms of a desperate attempt to more or less gather some sort of strength to remain calm and I guess you could say stoic, because I can't, do any better than that, realistically. I'm still waiting for what was initiated Monday to unfold, you might say. The lead up to Monday is filled with information that, is better understood in hindsight, for what it's worth. Then, of course, yesterday was more or less a day that really had no news. There walks, concerned about confirmation of what people decided upon in terms of advertising dollars and shoe leather or whatever it takes. Media efforts, private efforts that have resulted in what people wanted. I really didn't pay much attention to the coverage of Super Tuesday, but I haven't, what little attention I've given to all of that. It isn't important enough to have really top-notch coverage or anything. It's more or less, the Kmart blue light special, and here we have this, and over here we have this. There were fleeting references to people who were unhappy with the whole thing, but not much. It was more or less an attempt to say, here we go, and democracy at work, but nobody really was full-throated in any way that I experienced. Admittedly, I didn't click much on much of anything or anybody. So I guess, with just a fleeting look around, I didn't notice any big news about big upsets or anything of that sort. Maybe some people will, be filling in the rest of the week with one detail or another, but there again, whether there'll be any particular serendipity for me, I don't know. I'd sooner click on some clickbait, I guess, on the web than on satellite TV, but mainly I'm just, grieving over the hardships that I have to get through somehow, and been thinking about what I can do in a worst case scenario, and so on. Precious little can be done, but I'll do what I can if that is required. But all of it is a reminder, an emphasis on fairly obvious motivations behind what I suffer, and fairly obvious things about promises that can't be kept. That's why so often I said, don't bother. I don't mean to hassle anybody, but don't bother with promises, because they're not important to me, and it's like droning. It would be like tuning in and seeing Billy Graham on every channel or something. I don't want that. Or something else. What else? Protests with megaphones arguing for feminism or something. I do enjoy, what I recall of, for example, some distinguished figures in that, when they sit down with an adequate opportunity for an interview. they're long dead. And so much for that. But anyway, maybe that was an unfortunate choice of examples. For example, the lineup of female presidents of big educational campuses, how mediocre, how utterly mediocre. Although what? In theory, it involves heavy lifting on every campus. But, so I turn to people who have other things on their minds when I can. For example, it's interesting to see that Pratt & Whitney will power a brand new aircraft being built in Russia. It's interesting that they've just put in orbit 4 people, including Russian people working for the whole enterprise, despite mayhem on the ground. And I even saw something about, I don't know how many Starbucks locations there are. I know there are many in Canada, specifically Toronto. I've seen proof of that. Although I don't go for the fancy stuff, just, ordinarily I wouldn't want to pay that much for espresso, although I guess, I guess that's the going rate. But just for a plain pool of espresso without foam on it or anything, I don't care for that. But anyway, I know they have that in Canada, and I presume they have that for everybody near the Dartmouth campus, and that includes the varsity basketball team. I understand that there is, a serious effort by the varsity basketball team to unionize. I don't know how that works, but I remember not too long ago, a year or two ago, when there was a big push for footballers, or that is American football players, to unionize, and they outline their grievances, which are obvious. I guess they didn't because some concessions were made or something. It's awkward to think in terms of that, but then on many campuses there are academics who've unionized because they felt no choice, being exploited terribly. None of that's improved education as far as I know. I mean, we can see now that nobody seems to be able to solve problems. I mean, isn't that the point? The idea is to learn how to solve problems. Well, now the problems are stacking up, all around. So where are the problem solvers? Well, anyway, so I wish them well if it's practical. I don't know whether the story has legs or not. Sometimes, people can threaten to unionize, and the next thing you know, the powers that be, make offers to make that threat kind of wither away or disappear or vanish. But that was what I heard. That's bigger news than I can attribute to anything else all day on the 5th, Tuesday the 5th, and well into the evening, say until 8 or 9 o'clock. The biggest news of the day might be the plan to unionize a basketball team. I certainly have noted the drama, the bitter struggle for unions for workers at Starbucks. It's really been a knockdown, drag-out fight, step by step, and so on. And it's something to follow. And although few in media really follow it closely, a few are specifically disposed to follow such things very closely. So I have done that in terms of, the saga, you might say. Nothing like, the old sit-downs, in Detroit and so on, or the steel workers, or but in its own way, a kind of bourgeoisie feel to it, having to do with the affected people, Starbucks. But of course, sometimes these nice, crisp uniforms and cheerful smiles at Starbucks hide the agony of their private lives. I hope it's not too bad, and I hope it's not too bad whether they are unionized or not. But what can be said about, basketball players? For one thing, they have to be competitive, really. And if they're competitive, then they have to be in good health. And if they're in good health, then their environment can't be what some people suffer, whether they like coffee or not. So, it's a different level of engagement or so on, I'm mindful of junior doctors in the UK striking for better pay and better working conditions. In particular, when they get started on better working conditions, I think that's really the leverage they have. A lot of people don't care how much they make, but there are a lot of patients and so on who care a great deal about the working conditions, because patients share those conditions and share the outcome of efforts made according to the places where they work. So, that to me is very interesting, and it worries me too, that has to take place. And then, I think of the U.S., with the doctors, when they matriculate and get started and everything, they, of course, sign up for the AMA, and the rest is history in terms of what they stand for that way, with Big Pharma and so on. But anyway, I think it's interesting that nurses are also in the news occasionally in the UK. Doctors and nurses are in the news periodically. International news. In the UK, I don't hear anything, say, what about their counterparts in Germany or something, don't hear about it. Maybe no news there or whatever. But anyway, for me, it was the highlight, I guess, was the idea that a basketball team, which has to be healthy and ready to compete, should need a union to secure whatever it is. But you see, I don't know what it is they're striking over. Maybe that'll turn out to be self-evident if they actually do launch a campaign. Then I guess there'll be those specialists who will report on what it's all about. I don't know now. I don't think they're going to be saying that we can't compete because we only get a bowl of porridge 3 times a week or something. Meanwhile, let's see, that reminds me, it's almost 5:30, and 5:30 on what date? It would be the 7th, wouldn't it? No, Wednesday the 6th. It says 5:25 a.m. Wednesday the 6th of March, and really there's a lot of heartache about what people are doing to me, but the particulars outlined on Monday are not unlike other things that have happened. It's news in a sense, but in a larger sense, it's just business as usual for some, and nothing but business to hurt me without any time off or rest, or no R&R, just all business. A slave has no time off. I know back in the slave days, for what it's worth, the banter between the states. South Carolina used to say, well, we take better care of our slaves than anybody else. And the others would say, oh yeah, well, come look at our slave quarters. We do better than you do. What would they do? Sit in their drawing rooms and discuss that among themselves? Well, obviously, when I say that I'm treated as a slave, then you can bring on the slower, the more pedestrian characters who would characterize my personality, my sensorium, in clinical terms. Well, they're lurking, but that's all they do. They seem to, this situation seems to be construed to allow for what striving businessmen are trying to do. Have a go at Social Security payments, without any problem, with all regulators captive, and yet they still can't do any better. Although I know they don't serve other people, but they serve me. I don't worry about things that way, because there's a larger question involved. But here it is now, time for me. I'm going to have a bowl of Wheaties and whole milk. I still have a refrigerator. I don't know what else. Maybe not even that. No way to know. No way to know. People say, oh, don't worry. Well, worrying is only partially voluntary. A person can vanquish worry with a little effort. But if there's no stamina, then it's very difficult. I can say that in recent weeks, in spite of everything that is negative, I've gotten more sleep in the past. But it's not without a certain problem, namely my bloody legs that mess up the bed sheets, and they don't change them as they should, and yada yada yada. But yeah, I've gotten slightly better sleep, maybe 1 or 2 hours more per 24 hours, say for the last 3 months. But then I've noticed that whereas that offers some personal resources, things have happened to tax those resources, and then another body blow on Monday. So what happens the rest of the week or month, I just don't know. Nothing really worth commenting on, but my event horizon is only within the room, and then for what it's worth, I tend to say what's happening, and if I can think of something else, for example, I'd enjoy, commenting on some things of better interest, but dumbing down seems to be required because of what people say the agenda is, and that is to reach out to the people who are tormenting me. Well, then it hasn't worked, and having dumbed down around here quite a bit, I'm really not in a position to comment on the level of my disappointment in that regard. I do know that I'm unfocused more often now. There's a kind of free-floating despair, not anxiety, despair. Simply because, this is really getting old around here. It's as though people say, well, we can get more, crude and dumb and obvious, and sooner or later something will happen. Well, something has happened, I'll say that. Nothing unusual, because you see, at the same time, I'm privy to what they're told, that pumps them up and keeps them planning and coming up with something to do to me or with me, and they say that they're doing something for me and for the good of all. What was that Nikki was talking about something? He said, I wish the temperatures here were the way they are in Windsor. And he said, I guess we're entitled to the same temperatures in Toronto, because we're both in the same province. And so if Windsor gets warmer temperatures, then therefore Toronto should have higher temperatures. Well, now people don't attribute everything to Nick's remarks, but I thought that was fairly topical for the good of all. All right, well, that's it for now, and have a great day, a great week. I don't know what I'll do next, or when you'll hear from me, or what that might be, or whether you will or not, or I don't know. I don't know much of anything.